Hi guys, it's Izzy and welcome back to my channel. This is weird. There's been a lot of changes. You might be like, Izzy, you're out of bed. That's cool. Which, yes, it is cool. However, I can only sit up for short periods of time, but that's fine. I'm just here to film. I'm still mostly bedbound, but I've worked hard at rehabilitation for like 5 months, and so now I can sit up to film. You're also going to be like, Izzy, have you turned into Rapunzel because your hair's so blooming long? And the answer is yes, I have turned it into Rapunzel because I haven't been able to get a haircut, but I should be getting one in a few weeks, so thank God for that, because my hair is a hot mess. Let's just pretend it looks nice, okay? I could only film today, and I'm wearing a rather autumnal dress for the fact that it's May, but the sun decided to peace out, so it's kind of dark. Sorry if you can't see me that well, but you know, that's just how life goes. And also the angle's a bit different because you can kind of see my bed. Sorry, there was something in front of the camera. I've moved it now. Ignore that in the intro because I'm not filming the intro again. So yeah, you can kind of see my bed. And sorry if I'm a bit awkward because I haven't filmed in like 5 months, so I feel a bit rusty. But yeah, I'm back. Today I'm gonna film a video kind of just talking about what I've read so far this year. I've only read 30 books so far this year, which like to most people is probably quite a lot, but bearing in mind last year I read like 30 books a month, for me it's pretty slow. But I have been working very hard at neurological rehabilitation and physical rehabilitation and trauma therapy and stuff, so I've had a lot on, and reading has had to take a little bit of the backseat, as well as things like I've started studying Korean and I make art now, and I have a lot of things that I do that isn't just reading, so I guess that's good that I have more hobbies, but it does mean that my reading has been quite lacking. So I'm just going to talk you through the books I've read and what star rating I gave them, and then I'll talk about like a few books that I either really loved or really hated. Yeah, I'm not going to hold the physical books up because my arms are still weaklings and they can't do that, so I'm just going to put the cover on the screen. So yeah, I'm just going to talk you through what I've read so far this year, and then I will tell you the best and the worst of that stuff. Sorry if I keep looking in the viewfinder, I just want to make sure my hair looks somewhat presentable. Just pretend it looks good, okay? I need it for my ego. And you can sort of see my bookshelves, but it's not the best angle, but we're working with what we've got. My bookshelves are actually looking really beautiful at the moment, so hopefully in my next video I can showcase them a bit better, because right now you can mainly just see my Rick Riordan shrine shelf. Okay, so the first book I finished this year was The Girl and the Goddess, Stories and Poems of Divine Women by Nikita Gill. I gave this book 3.5 stars. It's a magical realism poetry book about feminism. And the next book I read was The Love Study by Chris Ripper. I gave this book 3 stars. It was like an adult queer rom-com book. It was a good time. I then read Things a Bright Girl Can Do by Sally Nichols. I gave this a 4 star. It's a young adult story written about the suffragette movement in the early 1900s, and follows 3 girls who are kind of part of that movement in some way. It was great. Then I read Graceling by Kristen Cashel, and I gave this book 4 stars. It's a like YA classic fantasy, and it took me way too long to read it, but it was great. I really enjoyed it. And I am trying to read more of the physical books I own. I have put myself on a book buying ban, which I actually have stuck to pretty much very well for the last like 5 months. I started it at the start of the year, and so yeah, I've been trying to get through my physical TBR a bit more. I've been somewhat successful. I mean, I've got a lot of unread books, but you know. The next book I read was Parachutes by Kelly Yang. I gave this book 4.5 stars. I adored this book. It was a complete and total surprise, and it follows two girls and their friendship as they kind of try and navigate being Chinese American in American schools, and like sexual harassment and all sorts. It's just chef's kiss. I've written like short Goodreads reviews for pretty much all of these, so if you want to hear my like actual thoughts on them, then you can check out my Goodreads, and I'll probably like talk about some of them more in depth in later videos this year, like in the midget book freakout tag, etc. The next book I read was The Scapegraces by Hannah Abigail Clark. Gave this book 3 stars. This is a YA book about queer witches and friendship. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, which was kind of sad. But then I read Ruin Song by Julia Ember. I gave this book 3.5 stars. Again, a book I thought I was gonna love more than I did, but it's a queer YA fantasy that kind of centres around song as the magic system. It was a good time, and it was a standalone, which is rare in fantasy, and so I enjoyed that it was a standalone. I then read The Rise of Kyoshi by F.C. Yee, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. I adore Avatar The Last Airbender, and if you are aware of Avatar The Last Airbender, this book follows Kyoshi, who was one of the previous avatars, and like her life finding out she's the avatar, and then like kind of how she sets up like the Kyoshi warriors and stuff. And this is a duology. I did buy the second book, which kind of broke my book buying ban, but I do plan to read that soon because I loved this book very much. I then reread The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is one of my favourite books of all time. I gave it 5 stars. Everyone knows what it's about. I don't need to tell you. I then also reread You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This is a fun queer YA rom-com book that I read last year and loved, and I just kind of needed something light and enjoyable, and something I could kind of switch off a bit while reading. Like I needed something that was just plain enjoyable. So yeah, I chose that one. I then read Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe, which I sadly gave 2 stars, which I'm really sad about because it's like a contemporary story set in the, I want to say 50s, I think, about 2 girls finding their way to each other and finding like queer community and like loving each other, but the main character is of Chinese descent, and so it also talks about her heritage and the difficulties of being Chinese during that period. I thought this was going to be like at least a 4-star, if not a 5-star, because it's a queer historical contemporary novel, which is usually a win for me, but sadly I didn't enjoy it that much. I then read The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow, which is a chunky book, let me tell you. It's an adult book that follows 3 sisters in the 1800s, I think it is, who basically have witchcraft and try and assist the feminist movement with their witchy powers. It's kind of a hard book to explain. I then reread Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the Last Hours series and one of my favourite books of last year and just of all time. It was just as good the second time around. I then read Run Rebel by Manjeet Man. I gave this book 4 stars. This is a story told in verse about a girl who is living in a household with an abusive father, and this kind of follows her as she recognizes her abuse and then starts to reach out, and her passion for cross-country running, and it's really beautiful and I think did such a fantastic job at exploring such a difficult topic. I then read Good Girl Bad Blood, which is the second book in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson. I read the first book, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, last year, and it was also one of my favourite books of the year, so I was really excited for the second book, but I gave this 3.5 stars. I didn't love it nearly as much as the first one. It's a YA murder mystery series, and the first book was incredible. I just think everything was done so perfectly, and like every element of the mystery was just top notch. But this one just fell a bit flat for me, and like it didn't add up as much as the first one, and like I just didn't. It just wasn't as good. In summary, it just wasn't as good. I then read Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare, the second book in the Last Hours series. I gave this 4.5 stars. It is really a 5-star book, but because I gave Chain of Gold 5 stars and I didn't love this one quite as much as Chain of Gold, I gave it 4.5 stars just to distinguish that I liked the first one better. But if we're putting it in the category of just like books, then it's a 5-star, but if we're putting it in the category of this series, then it's a 4.5 star. Does that make sense? I don't know, but I loved it. I love these characters. I love this story. I do just think it was a bit long is really my only complaint, I guess, and I'm so excited for the third book to literally destroy me, because this one already destroyed me quite a lot. Then I read Actual Age Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the third book in the Brown Sisters series, which is an adult romance series that follows 3 sisters and their subsequent love stories. The first book, Get a Life Chloe Brown, I read last year and loved because the main character, Chloe Brown, has a chronic illness, and it was like the first time seeing that really in any book, let alone a romance book, so that was like really special to me. And this romance has 2 autistic characters, both the main character and the love interest are autistic, which was super cool, and it was a really sweet romance. I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't tend to read a ton of romance, it's not my favourite genre, so I mainly read this because I loved Get a Life Chloe Brown and because it had such great autistic rep, and so yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars mainly just because romance just isn't my favourite genre, but if you're a romance fan then I highly suggest reading it because it was good. Then I reread City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab because I noticed the third book had come out and I completely forgot about it. I need to reread the second one, I haven't got around to it before reading the third one, but yeah, I gave that 4 stars when I first read it, and I would say it's still a 4-star. It's a solid YA, it's a solid middle grade story about a girl who can see ghosts. Then I read Felix Ever After by Kaysen Calendar, which I'm still a little bit torn about whether it's a 3.5 or a 4-star book. It was a good time. I really liked Felix as a character, I really liked the writing, and I really loved the fact that it tackled a lot of topics that we don't see in YA literature all that much, and I loved how realistic the teenagers were in the book. However, some of it just dragged on for me, and like sometimes it just wasn't enough to keep me super engaged, but still a good time. I then reread King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo, the first book in the King of Scars duology, in preparation for the second book, Rule of Walls, which I'll be talking about in a minute. That's still a 5-star, maybe like a 4.5 star, probably. I think it's a 4.5 star. I then read Sky Hunter by Marie Lu, which is a YA sci-fi series. I don't know if it's going to be a duology or a trilogy, but I read the first book, gave it 4 stars. It was a good time. If you've read Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, which is one of my favourite books, I think you'd really love this. It gave me Skyward vibes, and it was very fast-paced and entertaining, and yeah, I had a really good time reading it. I then read Every Little Piece of My Heart by Non Pratt, which I gave 4.5 stars, mainly because this book has a main character with a chronic illness, and she's a teenager and she has lupus, which is an autoimmune condition, and just like it resonated so hard with me, and it's something I've never seen in a book is a teenager with a chronic illness, and especially not as one of the main characters. I mean, it's kind of an ensemble cast, but she is one of the main characters, and she's also queer, and there's a female-female romance, and it just meant a lot to me, and I really connected with the book. Even though the plot wasn't super engaging, for me it was just a very special book, and if you are looking to diversify your reading and make an effort to read books with disabled characters, then I would highly recommend it. Then I read Ace of Spades by Farida. I'm sorry, I'm deaf and I cannot really pronounce names, but I think it's Farida Abike Iyamide. I'm really sorry if that's incorrect. I gave this book 3.5 stars. It's a YA thriller book that kind of tackles white supremacy and racism in the setting of a private school, and a mystery thriller. It had kind of Pretty Little Liars vibes, but like not. It was better. But I gave it 3.5 stars just because, again, it was a bit long for me. But I know it's highly anticipated. I was lucky enough to receive an ARC of it, but everyone else who's read it, who I know who's read it, has loved it, so I would say still pick it up. I then read Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo, the second and final book in the King of Scars duology, gave it 5 stars. I'll talk about it more in a second. And then I read Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, which I again gave 5 stars and we'll be talking about in a second. I then read Anna Kay, a love story by Jenny Lee. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. It's a modern day Anna Karenina retelling set in New York with like rich kids, and I just found it boring and I just didn't really care about any of it. So yeah, I didn't care for it. Then I read Monstrous Design by Kat Dunn, the second book in the Dangerous Remedy series, or the Battalion of the Dead series. I'm going to be making a whole video in promotion for Monstrous Design coming out in June, so I'm not going to talk about it here, but I gave it 4 stars. And then the most recent book I finished is The Lives of Saints by Leigh Bardugo, and I gave it 4 stars. It's a short story collection about the saints in the Grishaverse. It was a good time. I really enjoyed the short stories, and I got the Illuma Crate edition, and it's just such a stunning book. It's got so many beautiful illustrations, and I adored it. So I'm not really going to talk about the books I didn't like, because I really just don't have much to say about them apart from like they just weren't really for me. Like Anna Kay, it wasn't a bad book, I just nothing about it engaged me, and like it was just kind of like really difficult to get through because I just did not care. And like Last Night at the Telegraph Club, again, wasn't a bad book, it just didn't work for me. It was just dull, and really that's my main complaint with the books I didn't give a high rating, was that I just got bored while reading them, and in a time where like it's been hard for me to like read, when I'm reading I want it to be worth reading, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was just when I just didn't really find a book interesting. I am going to talk about a few of the books that I absolutely adored though, because I want to. I mean, Chain of Iron I don't really want to talk about because like spoilers for Chain of Gold, but like that book destroyed me, and I would die for all of my children. That's really all I have to say on it. It was great, and I truly cannot wait for Chain of Thorns, I think is the last book. I honestly don't know what's going to happen. And I'm just, yeah, I'm ready for Cassandra Clare to break my heart. Like, I finally feel like I know what people meant when they talked about, like, the Infernal Devices breaking their heart, because I just didn't connect as much to that book. But I feel like I'm really going to understand after Chain of Iron, not Chain of Iron, Chain of Thorns finally is released. Again, Rule of Wolves is kind of hard to talk about without giving King of Scars spoilers, but really all I can say it was just perfect. Like, I truly just did not have any criticism. Everything that I wanted to happen happened. Things that I didn't know were going to happen happened. Like, it was just so wild. I loved where all the characters ended up. I loved their stories and their arcs. I thought the action was great. I loved how political of a fantasy story it was. It really raised the bar for me in terms of political fantasies and the quality, like how good they can be, because Leigh Bardugo just really like knocked this out of the park, which we expect nothing less of our queen. But yeah, it was fantastic. Like, everything, it was just everything I wanted. And I feel like the ending left it open for a certain book to be written, and I will cry when that book appears. And also, if you've been watching the Shadow and Bone series on Netflix, let me know what you think. I've been loving it. I've got one episode left because I've been trying to show some self-restraint and not binge it all at once. And like, it's so wild seeing all my favourite characters come to life. Like, it's crazy, and I think if and when season 2 happens, it's gonna be insane. And like, it's just, yeah. And then a book that is very near and dear to my heart is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. This is it's a hard book to describe. Like, it's just beautiful. It's a adult contemporary novel that follows Grace Porter, who marries a girl she just met in Vegas and goes from there. She's finished her PhD or master's or something. She's kind of like a bit lost in life, and she's trying to figure out what to do next. Her relationship with her friends and her parents, her relationship with kind of her job, and she studied, I believe, astrophysics, and kind of how she feels about that career. And it's just I just don't know why I loved it so much, but every sentence that Morgan Rogers put together was magical. Like, so magical. Like, every sentence was just like a work of art. Like, she managed to make the most mundane things seem magical, and her writing was just insane. It had such a great like found family trope. Grace had such a great group of friends, which was just really nice to see, and it was, yeah, really relatable for me. Grace was someone who had pinned her worth and her success on her academic achievements, and she could no longer do that. And that's something I've really grappled with over the last few years. And so like that part really resonated with me. It had a beautiful queer romance, which was just everything I've wanted. Like lesbians who get married and then like have to get to know each other. That's that's a straight trope I've had to put up with for years, and now you're telling me we've got queer women of colour. Say no more. I mean, read it for the romance alone, but also it's one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking and touching and relatable books I've ever come across, and I would read Morgan Rogers' grocery list because her writing is somehow hypnotic. Like I swear to God, Morgan Rogers could hypnotise me. They could. They truly could. Like, I would just do anything they say because they would say it so beautifully that I would just have to. So yeah, that's my reading for the last 5 months. It's currently May. I'm turning 22 in like less than 3 weeks, which is crazy. And I hope to be getting back into making regular content over here on this channel. If you want to, you can follow me over on Twitter. I'm pretty active over there, and you can kind of stay more up to date with where I'm at with my life, I guess. And yeah, I'd really appreciate it if you liked this video. Please comment, tell me what your favourite book you've read so far this year is, or like your top 10 list. I don't know how many books you've read. Just tell me your favourite books or your least favourite book if you're feeling in the mood for a rant. I don't mind. Just leave me a comment. Subscribe if you're new, and yeah, let me know if there's any videos you'd like to see from me. Like I said, I'll be making a dedicated video to Dangerous Remedy and Monstrous Design, and I'll probably be doing like the mid-year book freakout tag somewhat soon, and yeah, I guess like a May wrap up at the end of May if I've read enough books. At least my wrap ups will be shorter. There you go, there's a silver lining for you. So yeah, my health's pretty bad, but you know, we're vibing, we're doing good. And yeah, thanks for sticking around, even though my content has been pretty much non-existent. I really appreciate it, and I think that's everything I have to say. Yeah, I just really hope I will be back to making regular content soon, now that I've finished with neurological rehab, which went on for a lot longer than I had anticipated. It was very hard, so I was pretty absent from the book world. Luckily, I had book friends to keep me updated on what was happening. So yeah, I think that's everything. Pretty much all these books I've read have been queer. Are we surprised? No. So I'll definitely be making a video in June for Pride Month to recommend you a bunch of new queer novels, because I read them, I recommend them, you're welcome. I am your one-stop shop for all your queer book needs, and yeah, that's everything. I don't even know what my outro is. Do I have an outro? Do I have an outro? Probably not, but thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Leave a little comment, I'd really appreciate it. I hope I wasn't too awkward in this video. I feel like I feel a bit awkward, but yeah, have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll see you in my next video, which will hopefully be soon. Bye!